Welcome back in, everybody. Another edition of Thursdays with Phillip here on the Auburn Undercover Podcast. Nathan King, joined as always by Phillip Marshall, our publisher Ronnie Sanders here today as well. And Phillip, we are headed into week 5 now, the end of this 5-game homestand for Auburn that everybody was looking forward to in the offseason. And for a lot of different reasons, this Oklahoma game was billed as their biggest home game of the year. Don't think you'll disagree with that heading into this game, but maybe for different reasons than Auburn would have liked, because their backs are certainly up against the wall now after a 2-2 start.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and and especially what's coming down the road. Got to go to Georgia next week, and it's so in that way it's definitely huge. But in another way, Oklahoma's not a juggernaut themselves, and it certainly looks like a winnable game to me. I mean, Oklahoma's great on defense now, but their offense has really, really struggled. And so they're starting a freshman quarterback, which, as you wrote about, Nathan, freshman quarterbacks have not fared very well at Jordan-Hare Stadium usually, especially new freshman quarterbacks, as opposed to, say, if Oklahoma had been playing a freshman quarterback all season long, which they haven't. So that'll be very interesting to see. It looks like, I guess, the weather's going to be okay. So I'm sure Auburn people will show up in force again, even though a lot of them are mad. And should be fun. It should be a fun game to watch.
I expect it will be. One of the things we talked about today, Phillip, was, one thing that jumped out to me was what Freeze said on Tiger Talk earlier this week, and said that, with all due respect to Sam Pittman, and he hoped that Arkansas won the rest of their games, but that if Auburn played Arkansas, 9 more times, they'd beat them 9 times out of 9. And, you said, well, what do coaches say, why they say it, and when it matters?
Well, to me, the first griping started over him supposedly throwing players under the bus. And then what he said on Tiger Talk. And I'll just be honest, to me, it's all much ado about nothing. If he had asked me for advice, would I have said to put it the way he put it about Arkansas? No, I'd have said probably don't, but does it matter? Not really. And the whole notion of throwing players under the bus, if there had been social media in 1984, when Alabama had a losing record and knocked Auburn out of the Sugar Bowl, when Auburn didn't score on the goal line, basically, because Brett Fullwood got tackled. But when Dye was asked about it, he immediately said, "Well, it would have worked, but Bo ran the wrong way." Now, there was no real social media then, but people were in an uproar about that too, throwing Bo under the bus. Who wasn't mad about it? Bo Jackson. Who I haven't not talked to him, but I'm betting are not mad about him saying we got to find somebody that can not throw it to the other team and hold on to the ball. The people who threw it to the other team and held on to the ball and didn't hold on to the ball, they're not nearly as sensitive as the fans seem to think they are. Like now they got their feelings hurt, so they're not going to try hard. And it's just the whole social media thing. I don't know what they've done now. I don't know if you might remember this, Rodney, when Tuberville grabbed Rod Hood because he had made a mistake. I don't even remember what the mistake was. Grabbed him and slung him all the way back to the bench. And he almost fell down. And people really go crazy about that now, I guess. But I'm afraid what happens is too many fans. It's not about that it's going to do some kind of great damage to the program. It's that they're going to have to read about it on social media, and they don't like that. And it's like I said, I don't think players are nearly as sensitive as fans are, and they've already put last Saturday behind them anyway. They're getting ready for the next one, which is what they have to do. And somebody told me, said, "Well, boy, that's going to really make Arkansas. They're going to really be fired up to play us next year." And I said, "Do you think they weren't going to be already? Do you think they weren't going to try until this?" I mean, it's to me, it's much ado about very little. And honestly, I wish that and in our world of journalism now, it's an opportunity for people to get clicks, and that's just unfortunate to me. But I think it's much ado about almost nothing myself.
Well, I think, Phillip, you make a good point. I mean, for the players, especially nowadays with NIL, I mean, I think these guys understand it's as much a business trip as anything else, and it's a production business. And if you throw the ball to the other team, you're probably not going to play very long. So I think that's part of it.
Well, and the thing is, and also then there was a lot of complaining about Peyton Thorne explaining the interceptions. He got his arm hit on this play. He got, hit the receiver in the hand of that play. Well, he didn't like that either. I guess, I heard Mac Brown after that. I was curious to see how Mac Brown was going to respond to giving up 70 points. And so I went on YouTube and found his post-game press conference. And the first thing he said, "It's all my fault." He said, "It's all my fault because I signed these players. I hired these coaches." And I'm thinking, is that really taking responsibility for what happened? Are you saying you signed the wrong players and hired the wrong coaches? I mean, I wish, this is something I admire about Freeze. If you ask him what happened, he'll usually tell you. The whole thing of, "Well, it's all my fault, I'm the head coach." You can say that, but nobody believes that you mean that. So I just don't see the. I mean, after Brown said that, I hired him, I signed him. Then he commits to what a lot of people apparently would call throwing his players under the bus. But I mean, my goodness, they just gave up 70 points. What's he supposed to say? They played great?
Well, I don't know if either of y'all saw, just a little bit off topic, but I mean, did you see the stuff that was reported by our 24/7 North Carolina site? People thought Mac Brown was retiring after that game. Like, that was a rumor that night. His post-game locker room speech was so to what Phillip said, like, "This is my fault. I don't know if I can do this right anymore." And people wondered if he was just quitting. He's not, obviously, but like, that was apparently players were telling him, like, "No, we'll do better." Like, I mean, it was a bizarre situation. I guess that'll happen after you give up 70.
I bet he quits at the end of the year.
Yeah, it certainly sounds
like information, but that's just, I bet he does.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the rumor before the season started anyway. And I talked to a coach on staff a few days ago, and he just said, talking about the game, he said, "We just couldn't stop them." He said, I've never seen anything like it." He said, our defense just could not stop them.
And that's not a good team. They played.
No.
It's amazing.
And Jeff Collins is not, I mean, Jeff Collins isn't a bad defensive coordinator historically. Like, just weird.
Speaking of defense, Phillip, where's Auburn's defense, and where does it go from here?
Well, that first and foremost, to me, their defense, their defense has given them a chance to win both games when they turn the ball over 5 times. And 5 turnovers affects everything. It makes the defense be on the field a lot more. I mean, everybody is dwelling on what I guess is it 3 straight possessions when Arkansas converted 3rd and longs. And the third and 19 pass, which was just busted coverage. I mean, safety's supposed to be deep, and he stayed up close, and that's just what happened. I mean, didn't have anything to do with the 3-man rush, which they did a lot, by the way, and made some big good plays. I mean, people act like nobody else has ever sent 8 into coverage, and it happens all the time. But they played well enough to give them a chance to win. I mean, if they don't, and that's really because they really are, their secondary particularly, and now, I mean, they've lost 2 important guys, and Champ Anthony was a really important guy. And so it's going to be a lot of youth back there, and the defensive line is not. Well, the interior defensive line doesn't have a real difference maker though on the edges. I mean, Falk is a big time player. That's obvious. I saw one day yesterday, I guess, where he's 3rd in the nation in quarterback pressures, and I think what some people don't realize is the quarterback pressures are what you're after, because I mean you're not going to sack them every time, but so I think their defense, despite the 3rd down issues against Arkansas, right before that they had 5 straight possessions where Arkansas didn't make a first down. So the defense has played well enough to win, and if they play as well as they've been playing, Arkansas is probably going to have Oklahoma's probably going to have a hard time scoring a lot of points. But I think they have overachieved, to be honest with you, based on what they don't have, and maybe that'll get harder. But so far, like I said, the defense has played well enough to win. Period.
Overall, 5 games in, what kind of grade would you give DJ Durkin in his first year?
Well, as I don't do grades, but I think it's been terrific. Again, for the reason I just mentioned, he's managed to I don't want to say cover up some weaknesses, but deal with some weaknesses and play well enough to win. I mean, they're not going to be dominant, and they're not going to do what some want to do and go out there and blitz on every play, because if you do that, you're leaving that young secondary vulnerable. Now, they may blitz the heck out of this guy Saturday. I don't know, but I think DJ Durkin has done a great job. I really do, and he's, his reputation precedes him as a defensive coach, and I think players like playing for him, and I think the 3-man rush that resulted in the touchdown on 3rd and 19. Like I said, that didn't happen because of the scheme. It happened because of blown coverage.
Considering Auburn's current quarterback situation, based on your years of experience, what's the best way to deal with quarterback situations?
Well, I think I remember when Jason Campbell in 2003 said to me, sometimes it seems like people think the quarterback's the only player on the field. And because he caught all kinds of heck. Well, they don't have a Jason Campbell now, but my point being that nobody wants to hear an explanation. They just want to look at numbers sometimes. Well, and throwing 3-4 interceptions against Cal. Hank barely threw 3 against Arkansas in the first half. But when you look at those, a lot of interceptions happen for a lot of reasons, and sometimes it's the quarterback's fault and sometimes it's not. but and that's been the case. But I think that the venom directed at Peyton Thorne is unfortunate to me, and I've seen it before. It's not unique, but and no, it doesn't matter to me that he's getting paid. I don't see what is gained by personally attacking a young man who wants to win more than anybody attacking him could ever think about wanting to win, who has paid the price to be there. And I just think that I don't think you can be wishy-washy about it. I think you got to either. I would be surprised to see, and it usually doesn't work to say, okay, well, we're going to play both of them. I don't see that happening, and my guess is Peyton Thorne will start Saturday, but it's just a guess, and I wouldn't in any way say who should start. That's the decision for the coaches, but that's just my guess, and that if he can play well, then he'll be the guy the rest of the year. One thing he brings to you is the ability to make plays with his legs. That's an underrated part of. I mean, they had Alabama beat, and him running the ball was a lot of the reason why last season. He had a 60-something yard run against Georgia. So that's an added threat that can be pretty valuable. And but he needs to play at a higher level overall, and they all do. And but I think you can't take out the turnovers. But if you could, they played pretty well otherwise. And so to me, that's the whole key to the whole thing. If you cannot turn the ball over.
I think, Phillip, I think you're right. I mean, you and I talked the other night. In those two losses, Auburn's had 10 turnovers. If you cut those turnovers down to 6, Auburn's probably 4-0.
If you cut them out, neither one of those games is close.
Right. Even if you cut out 4 of them, I mean, and so I think the other thing is, you talked about the vitriol toward Peyton Thorne. I also think that's as much cultural and social media driven now. I don't know that's necessarily unique to our culture nowadays.
I'm not saying it's unique. I'm just saying it's unfortunate. It's I just and maybe I'm just an old dude, but just for the life of me, I can't see how. I don't see a purpose for it. I don't see why it makes somebody feel better to do it. I just don't. It's I mean, it like I said, all it does is create a negative atmosphere. It's not going to make Peyton Thorne play any better. It's not going to do anything positive ever. And I was accused by earlier this week because I said I expected Peyton Thorne to be the starting quarterback Saturday, about that I was making it easier for Hugh Freeze to start Thorne when he needed to start Hayden Brown. And I told this person, I'm pretty certain that Hugh Freeze does not care. One, I didn't say what he should do. And two, I'm pretty sure he doesn't care what I think he will do. And if he does, he's got issues. I mean, it's but what I know is, and I tell people this all the time, is that what they're going to do is what they think gives them the best chance to be successful. And that whoever they put out there is going to try as hard as he can to be successful. And if he's not, and people want to get mad about it, then I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine getting mad about a football game unless I was personally involved. And even then, the only way I could see getting mad is if somebody just I couldn't I couldn't get angry at somebody trying as hard as he can. I'll just put it that way. And again, that it doesn't matter to me that they're getting paid. I couldn't get angry at an NFL player trying as hard as he can either. I mean, it's not like they're not. It's not like people. He wasn't prepared. That's very rarely true. Sometimes, but it certainly wasn't true in either one of these games. But it's just the whole thing's supposed to be fun. And if there's nothing fun to me about attacking young men or even coaches or whoever, I just don't see the fun in that.
Phillip, you talked about Oklahoma's offense. It's going to be interesting to me, Auburn being Oklahoma's first away SEC game. And Oklahoma's played in a bunch of big games, and but I looked at their schedule from last year and compared it to this year's. It's going to be quite a challenge the rest of the way out. It should be, and same with Texas. I think Texas is probably a little bit more SEC ready than Oklahoma, but we're about to find out.
I think Oklahoma's schedule, if you look at it, is a lot tougher than Texas. But yeah, I mean, it's Brent Venables has been to Auburn before, so he knows what it's like. But that freshman quarterback hasn't been to Auburn before, or anywhere for that matter, as the starter. So that's a big challenge for him. And as I said earlier, Nathan wrote a good story about how freshman quarterbacks have fared at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And the one that sticks with me is the LSU kid 10 years ago who had got highly praised for bringing LSU back in the fourth quarter to almost beat Mississippi State the week before, and who was good then. And then getting his first start at Auburn, and he was the epitome of a deer in the headlights. The thing to me, I mean, LSU's defense, Oklahoma's defense, I think is really legit and really good. And to me, that's where the game be won. How can Auburn? Because one, I think Oklahoma leads the nation in takeaways, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Auburn leads the nation in giveaways. If they don't, they got to be close. And they just can't do that. If they do that, they'll lose again.
Yeah, Phillip, I was looking way back, and obviously I don't know. I wasn't even close to being around for this game, but Matthew Stafford comes in with Georgia in 2006 as a true freshman. There's a couple other ones sprinkled in. I believe Hawkins is going to be the 12th SEC true freshman quarterback to start at Auburn since 2000. A couple other ones sprinkled in, like Kyle Allen with A&M in 2014 came in and played really well. Other than that, I mean, it's been TJ Finley in 2020. It's been really tough sledding for true freshman quarterbacks. And I mean, this was a bad Oklahoma offense before injuries. This was a bad Oklahoma offense before they changed quarterbacks. And so I just think there's an opportunity for Auburn's defense here to try to win the game for them.
I agree. It's that Matt Stafford, for instance, in that game, and that was, I, of course, was around then, and that was a really, really good Auburn team. And they had two against Arkansas at home. They just got shredded. Fred Talley, remember that, Ronnie?
Oh, I remember very well.
Matt Jones. But that was their only loss going into the Georgia game. And Georgia had lost like 4 games. But the one difference is Matt Stafford was the starter at quarterback, but he had been the starter at quarterback. I think that's different than coming in and making your making your first start. Now, what Stafford had not done that year was run the ball very much, and I think, if I remember correctly, he ran for about 80-something yards. And honestly, it was the game. It was not close. It was I think 30, 38-15 or 37-15 or something like that, and Georgia
30, yeah.
Georgia ran out the clock inside the 5-yard line at the end of the game. And then Auburn didn't lose. Then Auburn beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa the next week, and beat Nebraska in the Cotton Bowl and finished 11-2. So that was a good Auburn team. But that's kind of getting off the subject. But I think there's a big difference in the freshman who wins the job and spends the whole preseason preparing and prepares as the starter than somebody who, because of circumstances, all of a sudden finds himself the starter. This guy is apparently Hawkins is really athletic. I saw some of him against Tennessee, and it's in the 2015 Chick-fil-A game when Auburn played Louisville, and Lamar Jackson was a freshman, and he threw an interception on his first pass, and Auburn got ahead 31-7, and they put him back in, and he didn't bother to throw much, and they couldn't have caught him on a motorbike. I mean, they could not tackle him, and it ended up being 31-24. Auburn won, but so you never know. But I think you'd rather have a freshman starter. You played against a freshman starter than say if the previous starter, and his name slips my mind, had been having a great year and came in on the roll. I think you'd prefer this situation to that.
No question about that. Phillip, talk about the there's been a lot of complaining, obviously, about the 2-2 start and the quarterback play and this and that and everything else. But as we've talked before, I mean, you've seen a lot of Auburn football seasons. Compare the state of the program now to the previous coaching changes. I mean, obviously, Dye inherited some players, Bowden inherited some players, and for all of Tuberville's complaining, they pissed away about 4 games that first season and ended up making the SEC championship game his second season. Chiswick obviously inherited some players, and so did Gus. This is a little bit different for Freeze.
Well, it's completely different, and you're right about all those other coaches. And I mean, it's kind of ironic because both Dye and Tuberville went 5-6 in their first seasons, and they both lost multiple games they absolutely should have won.
Yep.
And Dye said to me one time, years later, that he said we should have won 3 more games than we did with that team. And he said, but looking back, it might be a good thing that we didn't, because we would have thought we were further along than we actually were. And, Tuberville, I mean, he had Ole Miss beat, he had Mississippi State beat. Those are the two that stick with me the most. Heck, they had Alabama on the ropes too in the fourth quarter. But
I forget how many games he lost that year on fake punts and fake field goals.
Yeah. Yep. But it's different. It's completely different for Freeze. And so for some reason, and I don't know why people don't like to hear this, but it's the absolute truth that there's a distinct comparison between what Freeze inherited and what Bruce Pearl inherited. But in both cases, they had to go get some transfers just to have a chance, just to even show up. I mean, they really inherited almost nothing, and obviously you see what Bruce Pearl has done now. Building building a basketball program, building a football program are completely different things. But the way Bruce Pearl did it was he sold himself to Auburn people before his team was any good. And they went 3 seasons without doing anything much. And but they still sold out that arena just about every game because he's the best I've ever seen at doing that. And when I call him a promoter, that sometimes has negative connotations, but I don't mean for it to, because he is I mean, students love him, fans love him, donors love him, everybody loves him, and they loved him before he went to the Final Four and those things. So if I was giving Hugh Freeze any advice, I mean, Hugh Freeze can't beat Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl is one of one, but it might be to work a little harder. To work a little harder is not the right word. Try a little harder to just sell yourself to the people you need. And maybe he does it more than I know he does. But and like I said, Pearl is. There's not another Bruce Pearl, but I think it takes longer to rebuild a football program normally, one that's in the shape Auburn's was in, and that's the thing. And I wrote a column earlier this week. It depends on how quick something can happen. Depends on the circumstances. It's not all the same. You can say that, well, this coach did fine. Well, Gus won 12 games his first year. He did, but the 2012 team had a lot of talent, even though it was the worst team ever at Auburn, probably. But it had a lot of talent. And then you added Nick Marshall to it, and off they went. And Gene Chizik had a lot of talent, and in 2010, and they had like 27 seniors. And an offensive line that had played 160 something starts, and so all situations are not the same. And the fact that Hugh Freeze has only 16 players remaining from those he inherited, and that the 2001 recruiting class, Jarquez Hunter is the only one left. You're not just going to turn that around. And the other thing is that he said from the start that he was going to build it through high school recruiting, that he was going to build a program as opposed to trying to build a new team every year. And that's what he's doing. And I think this fear that all these recruits are going to leave now because you're not winning enough games. The only thing that I think that would make most of those recruits leave would be if they became concerned that the coaches who are recruiting them wouldn't be there. And that's been my experience. I haven't seen winning and losing games have a lot of impact on what guys do. If they're planning on going somewhere, they've all lost games. And two, people want to believe that they all do whatever they do just because of NIL, and I don't believe that's true either. But at any rate, I think Freeze inherited the worst weakest roster since anybody, at least since Doug Barfield.
I do think that fit matters, and it matters more than at some places than others. And at a place like Auburn, Brian Harsin and Tony Barbie, they don't fit. And maybe they fit at Boise and wherever Tony Barbie is nowadays, but they don't fit at Auburn. And so those things are, I think those things are important. And I think Freeze fits. Could he do some things better? Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody can. You can always get better, but if you look at what he took over and the way he's recruiting and the way he's building it, I think that if you look forward, I mean, Phillip, we talked the other night, and look at Eli Drinkwitz and how long Missouri had to wait 4 years.
Yep.
And Bruce Pearl, it was 4 years. And like you say, building a basketball roster is a lot different than building a football roster. But 47 freshmen and true freshmen on the roster, that's a look. They and those freshmen may be talented, and a bunch of them really are talented, but they're still freshmen.
Yep. Yeah. And it's kind of funny to me about the whole quarterback situation. Walker White is toiling away on the scout team, and it's like he's forgotten now. Okay, he's not going to be the answer because he's not the starter as a true freshman. And I don't know that he will be the answer, but he might be, and has just as good a chance to be as he has at any other time when they signed him. But it's true that you got to have a quarterback these days, and I'm not saying they don't, but the quarterback, they don't have a dynamic quarterback, and you can't if you're a dynamic quarterback that makes big plays a lot, maybe you get away with some mistakes. But right now, they don't have quarterbacks that can get away with mistakes, and they're making mistakes, obviously, in the two biggest games so far this year, very frequently.
Well, and not necessarily even, I mean, dynamic, yeah, but teams that win championships typically have elite quarterbacks, and Auburn certainly doesn't have that right now.
No, and Auburn's not going to win a championship either. Yeah, they got, it's, I think sometimes trying to say to win a national championship, you got to have this and you got to have that. I mean, the 2010 Auburn national championship team, if you look at statistics, probably was as bad defensively as any team's been to win a national championship. But starting with the second half of the Alabama game that year, they were really good on defense, and in the championship game, Oregon was averaging like 50 some odd points a game, and they had a hard time moving the ball on Auburn. So I think, and I agree with you that Auburn doesn't have a quarterback to win a championship, but if Peyton Thorne was or Hank Brown or whoever was surrounded by the players that with great players and experienced players, they would look like a lot better quarterbacks than they do.
Well, there's no question. And I typically, like I say, to win a national championship, a lot of times you need an elite quarterback. But like you say, I mean, if you're not surrounded with, I mean, obviously Cam Newton was an elite quarterback, but Pat Dye won championships without elite quarterbacks, but he had some elite players, but he had some really elite players around those quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it was a different day. And but I think Alabama won some under Saban without really elite quarterbacks. Jake Coker was certainly not an elite quarterback. But again, I think it's a everybody looks better the more talent there is out there. It makes everybody look better. Just like it's hard for anybody to look good when you turn the ball over 5 times. I mean, it makes every facet of the team worse.
No question.
Phillip, this is a little bit off topic, I guess. We're talking about earlier paying players and things really not changing from a maybe a criticism standpoint, but I mean, I wanted to get your thoughts on the situation that I think we all knew this would come at some point of the checks not clearing. But the UNLV quarterback, Matthew Sluka, look, they were awesome here early in the season. And I think, we're considered a contender for that G5 playoff spot. And he's sitting out the rest of the year. And the reporting is that, the promises made to him when he came there haven't been fulfilled.
Yeah. From the stories I read, his agent, and I still have a hard time getting my hands around talking about agents when you're talking about college players. But his agent said that an assistant coach promised he would get $100,000. Well, one, if that's the case, that's clearly a violation of the rules if that happened. And two, you better, and it's amazing that you have an agent and he doesn't understand this, because normally they would say the offer would come from the collective and then you would sign an agreement. Well, none of that happened. And for his agent to not recognize it is probably a bad idea to take the word of an assistant coach. He probably doesn't have anything at all to do with that whole thing. And just assume that you're then going to get $100,000 at UNLV probably is not a good idea. But having said that, I don't know. I just one when he's a senior and one when there's 22, 23-year-old men and their parents are speaking for them, that's a red flag to me. And two, and I'm sure he feels like he was not treated fairly, and I understand that. But now he's just walking out on his teammates, and I'm sorry, I'm still old fashioned enough to have a problem with that. And be it a player, be it a coach. Terry Bowden didn't have to leave when he left. He left because he got his feelings hurt, and he didn't want to do it, and he walked out on his team. I got a problem with that too. Have had ever since he did it, and but there's got to be something to team loyalty. Now, having said all that, obviously UNLV screwed it up, or that assistant coach screwed it up, and so, but the kid had, he had no contract, he had no agreement, he had nothing except that an unnamed assistant coach told him he'd get $100,000.
Well, you would think in Vegas they could go down to the Peppermint Hippo or somewhere and find $100,000 to get.
Well, really that's true, and because I've been hearing people say for a year that people are making NIL offers before they have the money to make it good. But here's the thing: if it's Alabama or if it's Auburn or if it's Georgia, and they say, "Oh my goodness, we run short here. We promised the quarterback $300,000 and we don't have it." Well, then you go find somebody and explain to him or her what's happened and get them to give you the money. That's what you do. But I'm sure that's a lot harder to do probably at UNLV. But it does seem like they could have gone and gotten $100,000. I have to agree.
I was out there in December. I'm telling you. I mean, it's an interesting place. I mean, it's
Las Vegas.
I had been. It had been 10 years or 9 or 10 years since I'd been out there when I went in December. It's you can get in some trouble.
I've only been there once. And what I remember is it was in the summer and it felt like you were living in a hairdryer.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like it was like 110 degrees, but you couldn't even perspire because there is zero humidity. So it's suffocating.
Phillip, the Vegas Bowl this year has an SEC tie. So if Auburn makes that one, are we going to get you out there for it?
Nah.
I think that'd be fun.
But it'd be fun. All you young guys have a big time.
Well, I think, hey, look, we're living in the wild, wild west of the NIL era now. I mean, you got to think at some point over the next handful of years that you're going to have contracts that are going to bind both parties, because this can't. You
I
wouldn't
think
think
that's going to start happening as soon as this House settlement finally goes through. But here's where it's going to get crazy. You know, it's not like having this 22%, $22 million, whatever it is, to share with athletes. It's not like not like NIL isn't going to go away. It's not. It's just going to be more. But you know, but you can, and all these judges just, you know, and I don't want to get on my soapbox about this, but I think that you have people making decisions that really don't understand the game, and I still say that the people who wrote the Sherman Antitrust Act would be stunned to see it being used in relation to college football. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You're going to have contracts, I think, for the money that the university is paying. I don't think there's much question about that. And but how then NIL is going to fit in on top of that, that's going to be interesting to see.
Phillip, do you think it's as we go into this game here, a big one for Auburn, I feel like it could be even more frustrating for Hugh Freeze and this staff, the fact that if you just didn't turn the ball over, you wouldn't be in this spot. I mean, it seems like it's obviously it's not a simple fix. Who knows if it's not like they've been playing incredible on offense other than that, but I just think a lot of this frustration right now from Freeze, I can sort of tell that this is wearing on him early this season. And I don't really blame him. I mean, you thought you had things in line early this year.
Yeah,
and
I don't think he expected it at all. And I think that if they don't turn the ball over, you can say, well, they also got this or that other. But the fact of the matter is that if they turn the ball over a reasonable amount or not at all, then they're 4-0 today and probably ranked about 22nd or 23rd or something like that, and
then maybe
ready to play a huge game, and to be 2-2 instead, and other than ULM, probably have lost to two teams that are not as good as the ones you got to play. That's got to be really disappointing for everybody involved, because I don't think there's any doubt that Auburn players expected more than that. Auburn coaches expected more than that. And now they're in a place where, I mean, you're an underdog at home Saturday, albeit a very small underdog, but you're an underdog at home Saturday. And then you got to go to Georgia, and then you got to go to Kentucky, and then you got to go to Missouri the next 3 games. And I mean, you're looking at a possible worst case scenario of you're sitting there 2-5, or actually 2-6 if they lose Saturday. Lose to Oklahoma, Georgia, Kentucky, and Missouri. And I'm not saying they will or should lose all those games, but certainly they're all losable or winnable, except possibly the Georgia game. And so that just makes this game that much bigger in a lot of ways. But it's just, I mean, I'm sure it's just very disappointing. It's not what I don't think. Nathan, you're around all the time. I don't think you expected this. I didn't expect this. But whoever expects somebody to turn the ball over 10 times in 2 games? I mean, nobody ever expects that. And
well, part of it, part of it goes back to quarterback too.
Sure.
And the running backs, they're not without blame either, I think, is something that needs to be touched on.
The biggest turnover in the game, in my opinion, against Arkansas was the fumble into the end zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the second time that DeMar Austin has fumbled down close, and you just can't do that. And that's fumbles are different than interceptions. Sometimes you putting the ball in the air 20, 30 yards down the field, sometimes it's going to get caught by the other team. But you just can't fumble the ball, and particularly can't fumble the ball in crucial situations when you're about to score. And he I think his issue is he doesn't always secure the ball with two. You watch and look, Jarquez has fumbled a time or two as well, but if you watch when he's about to get hit, he wraps up the ball. And Damari didn't really do that on that particular play, and he got knocked out of his hand. And that would have tied the game in the second quarter, and probably I think would have changed the whole game.
Well,
Just like the dropped interception against Cal would have changed the whole game.
Before we go, a couple things. We've had a bunch of questions on the message board. What if Auburn finishes 3-9? Does Hugh Freeze get fired?
No.
For those asking, the answer is no. And the other thing is, going into this game, what's your prediction for the game, and what's your prediction? And we can do this the rest of the year. What's your prediction for the game, and what's your prediction for the rest of the season? Where does Auburn end up?
Now, Ronnie, you're asking me to do stuff I don't do. And I'd be glad to say my prediction for the game because it's in our fearless forecasters. I picked Oklahoma 23-21, and it was like tossing a coin. I think you could go either way. As far as the rest of the season, they need to win 4 games to get to a bowl. Can they do it? I think they can win Saturday. I think they can beat Kentucky. I'm not sold that Missouri is an unbeatable team. I think they'll have a chance against Missouri. I think they'll beat Louisiana Monroe. I think that Texas A&M at home is certainly beatable. They haven't shown me anything to make me think they're anything special, even though I think they'll beat Arkansas pretty handily on the road Saturday. But I think they got a chance to win 6 games, and which would have been 8 games if they had won those 2 that they should have. And but I think to win more than that, they'd have to pull an upset, which is not beyond the realm of possibility either.
Well, I also think, if Peyton Thorne starts having some pretty good games and these young players start coming along, you never know what can happen down the stretch. And
but Cam Coleman getting hurt certainly hasn't helped things any. But I'll tell you what, Keandre Lambert-Smith, he's a heck of a player.
Yes, he is.
But I think they just don't have much margin for error. It's as simple as that. I mean, on either side of the ball. Can they play well enough to win? Yeah. But they just can't make hardly any mistakes. And when they do, it costs them usually.
Phillip, that looks like a good place for us to wrap up.
All right, my friends.
Good to be with you this week.
Have a great day.
See y'all.
Good to be with you.